Hello, Mark. I'm going to be responding to your paper on corporate social responsibility. Social responsibility is a huge issue for corporations in today's world. There is a big controversy about whether companies should value social responsibility or not. Some may argue without the biggest corporations in the world staying socially responsible, our society may never look after itself. Others may say that big corporations can't be socially responsible because they already have enough to worry about within their business. When reviewing this controversial argument, it's important to understand both sides' points of view. Also, it's vital to recognize how much power corporations have over the public. Let's first look at what corporate social responsibility is. Lovely. I'm just looking at your apostrophe inside, so it's important to understand both sides. So the apostrophe should be after the S, I guess, because you're saying both sides have a point of view. It belongs to both of them. Yeah. Okay. Small thing. Piddly thing. Okay. Corporate social responsibility is business self-regulation to keep the company socially accountable for its actions. It's the ability of a corporation to understand its role in keeping the world a better place while still maintaining its business. It's been proven that employees and customers, quote, place a premium on companies who prioritize corporate social responsibility. This means that people would rather spend their money or work for a company that executes corporate social responsibility. That doesn't, work for a company that executes corporate social responsibility against a company that doesn't care about helping out socially. You can fix that. Yeah, that's you're totally on a roll, and that's one little stumbly place that needs some revision. Which I don't think I need to say anything more about, right? There's a section about people would rather spend their money on a good company rather than a bad company or something like that is your basic idea there, which comes through just not very clearly. According to Business News Daily, keeping a positive image is vital for a company to stay afloat. Okay, at first I was thinking, like, is this a source named Business News Daily? But I think you're just talking about news. Okay. This could be advertising about being green, holding events that help clean the world, or even donating some of its profits to charities. Now, we know the meaning behind corporate social responsibility. Let's look into why this subject is so controversial. So, your transitions are very speech-like rather than formal paper-like. But I mean, I'm not gonna freak out about that. I would just say that, like, to have things in a formal academic style, I feel like you would just kind of take those sentences out or do something like first, what is corporate social responsibility, right? What makes it feel more informal is that when we say let's, right? Let's is the kind of thing that you definitely want to use in a speech, and you can definitely use in your presentation. That sounds great. But yeah, for a more formal style, you want to not use let's because it's kind of like, hey, come on in. We're all, it's just not as formal. Okay, corporations have a lot more responsibility than the general public may ever know. It's hard to comprehend how much they really control in today's world. An article from HBR states that the general public must, quote, recognize the real costs of safety and sustainability. Even corporations with millions of dollars have been able to pay off their debts while still creating profits. Yeah. Some people may argue that, quote, businesses should not feel morally obligated to pursue other goals. This means that the company shouldn't have to focus on something that doesn't affect their profits or goals in any way. It may cause them more expenses to keep a positive image. Philip Booth is the author of the article. Okay, I think you need a comma there. Philip Booth, comma, the author of the article, Why Business Doesn't Need Corporate Social Responsibility to Be Ethical, also explains how that's what civil society institutions and charities are for when it comes to caring for the world. That's fair. Booth explains how there are thousands of charities and institutions that care for the world, so why should corporations have to? Question mark. But what's awkward about that sentence is that Booth explains this, and then rather than saying Booth asks why corporations should have to take care of it, which would be having them both be kind of in the same. It's kind of a thing about parallelism, like making both the pieces of your writing work the same way. That that would make it smoother. Booth explains how there are all these things and questions why corporations should have to. Would make it have each piece of that flow the same way. Also, it just feels a little jarring, like, why should corporations have to, right? It kind of sounds like you're quoting him all of a sudden, and I'm like, what? Okay, another argument for people who believe that there doesn't need to be corporate social responsibility is that, quote, management should pursue the interest of shareholders. That point of view is understandable because when shareholders, okay, so you're talking specifically to, right, corporations. So you're not talking about, you're talking about publicly traded corporations also, most likely, right? Management should pursue the interest of shareholders, right? That point of view is understandable because when shareholders put a lot of money into a company, they want to look for the most profitable opportunities instead of focusing on caring about what others think they should be doing. When looking for a new opportunity for a company that's fighting to make ends meet, its first thought is not going to be what is socially responsible for the world. Well, I mean, it might be. But yeah, I get that. Instead, it will focus on how to make profits while keeping expenses low to create the most revenue possible. Maybe we'll get into this in a minute, but I'm imagining that, like, if you have your whole campaign, like Tom's Shoes or some of these companies that, like, their whole thing is buy our product and it's pretty good, and you'll also do this really nice thing, like, I think that maybe is what they did. Anyway, Nikolai, somebody of something, and somebody of something did a study on CEOs who are single versus married. They came to the conclusion that firms with single CEOs are much more aggressive in terms of investment behavior, innovation, and acquisition. Gavitt explains this could be from wanting an increase in wealth over other single CEOs. It could also be from not having families to worry about. They feel more obligated to be more risky rather than focus on what really matters in the world. Wow, that's interesting. That last part, I think you could do better with, though. There's some repetition in there. Okay, she also talks about how the same dynamics of upper managers go for lower managers, too, who are single. Obviously, this isn't the case for every single CEO, but it is something to look into in figuring what type of companies don't prioritize corporate social responsibility. Now that we've looked at multiple arguments why corporations don't need social responsibility, let's look at why it's important for corporations to be socially responsible. Again, let's edit out the let's. In this case. In your presentation, it's just right. A statistic from the 2015 Cone Communications Equity, might be equity, it might be a typo, found that 91% of global consumers want business to operate responsibly. Also, 84% of consumers seek responsible products whenever possible. This goes to show that companies who aren't socially responsible will take a big hit on profits. If people find out about it, I guess. And assuming also that people have a choice in what they buy. I mean, there's a whole group of people who are going to go to the Family Dollar and buy whatever's at the Family Dollar because that's all they can afford. So anyway, I guess it's a separate conversation. This goes, when people find out corporations are doing bad things, its image. Okay, so when people find out a corporation is doing bad things, its image and revenue will go down by a major amount. You could either make that all plural or you can make it all singular. I feel like it makes more sense to do it all singular when people find out a corporation is doing a bad thing. I'm sure most CEOs are aware of all these statistics about consumers valuing companies who are socially responsible, but let's dive into the advantages of being responsible. One of the most important advantages is improved public image. This is because consumers assess your public image when deciding to buy from you. More advantages are increased brand awareness, cost savings, increased customer engagement, and more benefits for employees. When you have an improved public image, you have more brand awareness. I guess maybe. Cost savings? I mean, maybe. Consumer engagement? I get that. Benefits for employees, though? Like, just because they like working for a company that seems, feels like a nice company or a good company. When companies look out for bigger social issues rather than focusing on their profit margins, quote, it will attract consumers that carry the same values. This will help with building loyal customers who will impact your positive image. Many ways corporations can be socially responsible. Many ways they can be socially responsible are there by, or some other fix for that sentence, which got a little weird. Maybe just start off with corporations can be socially responsible by, or with, or something, environmental efforts, philanthropy, ethical labor practices, and volunteering. When word got out that Nike was using sweatshops with very poor working conditions and low wages in Indonesia to produce products, they got put under a lot of heat. This forced them to, quote, improve their monitoring efforts, raising the minimum wage and increasing factory audits. This is a prime example of why consumers believe it's important to be socially responsible. I'm going to say no. I think this is a prime example of why, of the possible negative effects. Wait, no, because you talked about they changed it. But of the possible changes to corporate behavior that consumer opinions have. I think that's what it's. That's not why they believe you should be socially responsible, but okay. The biggest argument as to why corporations should be socially responsible is because that's what is most important to consumers. Well, most important. In today's world, more consumers than ever are demanding companies take an active role in addressing social, cultural, and environmental issues. This can be changing how a company does business and by being more transparent. This can be from changing. That needs fixing. This can come from changing how a company does business or by the company becoming more transparent. I don't know. According to a blog from Ohio University, companies looking to hire millennials need to embrace corporate social responsibility to attract talent. On the other end of this, getting employees. It is easier than ever to research a company's history and how socially responsible they've been in the past. The rise in millennial customers shall increase the likelihood of a company to prioritize social responsibility. It's clear that there are many reasons corporations should be socially responsible, but who has control in this matter and what values do they hold? See, you got away with the question this time. Corporations have more power than the general public. Politicians and political parties are involved in this matter because when it comes to electing a president, corporations donate millions of dollars to who they believe is the better fit. Not only do politicians play a huge role, but also public opinion. An example of this is Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old environmental activist who started a huge environmental campaign. In the era of technology, quote, corporate fiat is increasingly being tested in the court of public opinion. There is huge growth in public shaming and protesting against corporate power. Huge growth. I don't know. I just feel like maybe something about the word huge makes me feel like you actually need a number. If you just say there has been growth in public shaming, then like kind of no one can argue with you because that's so like, probably there's more. When looking at statistics about the general public, 90% of all U.S. adults believe that big companies have too much power and influence in Washington. For most people, this is a problem considering that most of the consumers of these corporations are the general public. Wait, what? I don't know what you were trying to say there. With the rise of technology, it's becoming more common for ordinary people to become more powerful with viral tweets, creating groups, forming protests. So whenever you use etc., the etc., you don't need to say and because the first part of that actually means and. Fun fact. Et means and. So you can just put forming protests, etc. As corporations have more power than the public, who knows how much longer that will last? One major example of the public coming together is the Extinction Rebellion protests in London, which were against, quote, carbon emissions and global warming. This shows that even though corporations have more power than the general public, people will stand up for what they believe and fight against big companies. After reviewing who has more power in today's world, let's look into the values of these big companies. Oh, there's a let's. It's got to go. The values the general public wants corporations to abide by are accountability, honesty, contribution, passion, and meaningful work. Corporations that value social responsibility contribute to society and create meaningful work by giving back to their communities. This could be by donating profits to charities, putting less poisonous gas into the air, and recycling all wasted products. Corporations that don't use social responsibility lack accountability, worry too much about wealth, and value control. These values, according to 90% of adults, aren't acceptable in today's world. So because of that 90% you mentioned earlier, you think they have too much. That was about they have too much power, though, not that their values are wrong. Just they're using their power. I mean, it doesn't say if it's good or bad. They just said there's too much power. The increase in millennials has more corporations being publicly shamed. With the rise in internet and global communications, protesting and corporate power know no national boundaries. That's a better point than your point about there being more. Because there was a lot of this kind of protest, like late 90s as well. Anyway, the increase in millennials have more... Sorry, lost my place. It's clear that corporations have the majority of power in today's world. The majority of power? No one said the majority, but people said too much, I think, right? It's an open question, which you haven't raised in this paper, and you don't need to. Like, how much power should corporations have?